Hello, everyone, and welcome. My apologies for the delays. We'll get started in just a moment.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Having a little trouble sharing my screen. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. So my name is Megan Patterson. I'll be the host today, and I'm the volunteer manager at the Gateway Arch Park Foundation. So welcome to May 2021's Alive Academy webinar. I am so pleased to have everyone here today to join us for Alana Knapau's presentation on advocacy. So a brief overview for today is we'll go over with some housekeeping, notifications real quickly, and then introductions, and get on with the presentation. And then after the presentation, we'll go through and have discussion and answer some questions. And then stay tuned at the end to learn more about upcoming Alive Academies and events. So housekeeping, if you're having trouble with audio visual today, you have options, so don't worry. You can keep the video streaming on your computer and call in from your phone if that's helpful. And if you're having trouble with video, just call in with your phone. You'll be able to hear everything. And then any other tech questions, put those in the chat and send those to Gretchen so she can help you out with that. So speaking of the chat box, if you want to talk to all attendees, just select that option whenever you type in your chat and send that out to everybody. Otherwise, you'll just be sending that to the presenters, which would be Gretchen, myself, and Alana. And we want to encourage you to chat with each other, so definitely use that function if you want to. And we'll be monitoring the questions as well. So if you have any questions for Alana, you can drop those in the Q&A box. And now it's time to introduce our presenter. So we're very excited to have Alana Knapau here today. She is the volunteer program manager for Hospice of Michigan and Arbor Hospice. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology with a minor in Biological Anthropology from the University of Michigan. She also returned to the University of Michigan to complete her master's in social work with concentrations in aging and management and a minor in interpersonal practice. Alana is very passionate about empowering volunteer management professionals to advocate for their needs and about elevating our profession in general. She is a founding member and community moderator for Volunteer Pro, and I use that all the time. So if you haven't checked it out, take a look at their website. And she's also a committee member for the National Alliance of Volunteer Engagement. So I'll turn it over to Alana to start her presentation, and feel free to use the chat box and drop in any questions you may have.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Gretchen. I'm excited to be here. I am also now a board member on Alive, so that's a little new. So I'm excited to be part of it to do this. So I'm going to share my screen right at this moment. So just one sec, and I'm going to pull up my presentation. Okay. And do get ready to participate. I'm going to be really looking for responses in the chat from you all, and it's going to be very interactive. So I'm excited for that. Okay. So I'm going to just do this and tell me if you can see my presentation. Do you see a purple slide? Let's see if I can still see the chat. All right, here's the chat. Yes, thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Gretchen and Gerald. All right, so I've given my presentation another sort of subtitle, which is saying yes to what matters most to your mission. So even though we're going to be talking about boundaries and saying no to the things that don't, really this is a conversation about how to say yes to the things that we really do need to focus on. So one overarching principle that I really believe in, and I'm just going to share like this if you don't mind, is that if you aren't furthering your mission, you're taking away from it. So I want you to keep that in mind throughout the presentation. And I want to get back into the slideshow. All right, so all right, what we're going to be discussing today is boundaries for our profession as volunteer management professionals. I can tell you that I've been in volunteer management for the last 10 years, and my boundaries didn't start out great. I didn't come into the profession great at boundaries. It's something that I've really learned and established and advocated for myself and my staff and my volunteers along the way. We're going to talk about saying no when we need to, and how to do that. We're going to practice. And we're going to talk about screening requests from coworkers, from volunteers, from your upline, whoever it is at your org, a little bit about screening volunteers. And we're going to end with some self-care, not in the way you might be thinking of it. So we'll get to that. So let's start with our first poll. I'm going to ask her to put that up, please. Excuse me. All right. So this is a really simple one. It's just a yes or no, true or false. And the question is, or the statement rather, is I have regretted saying yes to something that I should have said no to. And we'll give you a few more moments to let everyone check in on this. So far, the results are overwhelmingly in one direction over the other. I am certainly guilty of this myself. Like I said, I didn't come in, with a suit of armor made of boundaries. It's something I've really built over time. All right. Yep, so sharing the results, 100% true. So that's how I know I'm talking to the right crowd. So thank you for that. And I'm just watching the chat. Thank you, Emma. Love seeing a fellow MSW. Great. Thank you, Emma. If you share a background in social work, you might sort of agree that the inevitable product of merging the social work and volunteer management professions is a presentation on boundaries. So let's go to our next poll, Gretchen, if you would. This will give me an idea of who's in the crowd today and who we're talking to with each other. Just one moment there. I'm also going to take this opportunity to apologize. If you hear any weird background noise, it's my pug snoring. Okay, so this is just asking you how long you've been managing volunteers for. How new are you or established are you in the field? Wow, some really established folks. So you might be thinking back to the beginning of your careers throughout this, and you might have some wisdom to share as well with other attendees, which I certainly welcome in the chat. We've got a one in the 2 to 5 range. All right, let's see. I think that's probably, yep, that's great. So we've got one of you who's relatively new, but you've probably gotten your feet wet in the 2 to 5 range, and then a number of us in the 5 to 10, and then the majority actually for quite some time, 10 years or more. Go team. All right, so the next one, this is a question I pose to you. What are some examples? I'm sorry, what are professional boundaries? Not some examples, but just a definition. If you could put in the chat for me, and remember to click all panelists and attendees, how would you define professional boundaries? Are they something you have? Are they something you don't have? Are they something you'd like to have? And then I'll share with you my very simple definition that I came up with. So Carrie says, boundaries are about your needs and not others. Good. Agreed. Kelly says, being able to say no and have colleagues respect that. That is the theme of the day. Perfectly summarized. Thank you. What else? Maybe a couple more. Jerry says, focus on your priorities and filter requests from others. That's exactly what we're talking about. Filtering, that's a really good word for it. Okay, Shelly, you've come to the right place today. I'm really glad you're here because she said boundaries, question mark. And okay, let me scroll back. These this is great. Maggie says, not giving my entire life to my job. Yes, gold star. Liza, being able to recognize what I am capable of and what others are capable of as well. Okay. Gretchen, that you can articulate a no professionally, even if you might have only personal reasons for saying no. That's really interesting, Gretchen. I might want to hear more about that from you. And then Heather says, establishing expectations for yourself and colleagues. Eric says, setting clear expectations in both directions. I love it. So I'm just going to give you my quick little definition. I just think of it as the line between what you will and won't give of yourself at work. Very simple. This is not something I have a citation for. This is just how I conceptualize it. So what you say yes to, what you say no to, and to an earlier point, you know, making sure it doesn't infringe on your time outside of work. So I'm going to go to the next one. So what are some examples of professional boundaries? Go ahead and type those in the chat. I think we saw a few earlier. If you can see this little one new message, how many of you instinctively tried to click on it, I wonder? Bonus points if you actually did click on it. Sorry, it's not a real message. Yeah, what are some examples of professional boundaries? Something that you do to assert your boundaries or to make sure that others aren't breaching yours. I'll give you what mine are. Oh, Shelley, take lunch every day. Very good. How about this one? Turn off your work phone after hours. Same goes for not checking your work email. Oh, there you go, Kelly. Try not to check work email outside of work hours. Contact them during work hours. Having clear agreements in place. I like that. Respecting work-life balance. Yes. Is it a short-term issue or a long-term issue? And what amount of time do I devote to it? Really good. So I also had, it's very good. FISA would know this. The ethics of our profession. It is part of our code of ethics as volunteer managers. If you have a CVA, I'm sure that's something you studied. Not checking work email or phone after hours. Brittany, friendships at work. Where are the lines? Oh, great question. And that could depend on a lot of things. If it's your client, I think the line is probably pretty straightforward. I would hope that you're not having a relationship, social relationship outside of work. But if it's a coworker, you might. If it's a volunteer, you probably don't. So because there's that power imbalance of you being the supervisor at work. And just a reminder from Gretchen, this meeting is being recorded, and I'll also share these slides afterwards and my contact info. So one example of professional boundaries I want to talk about is not working more hours than you're paid for. If you are salaried, that's an easy trap. Our work is the kind of work that doesn't have a stopping point. It will just keep going. So we have to decide and consciously make a decision on where is our stopping point going to be for the day. Taking lunch breaks. This is one I'm really bad about. I admit it. So make sure you take those lunch breaks. You don't have to sit at your desk and work right through. I'm going to get into this one a lot, the turning down assignments outside of your role. That's going to be a big focus. Being no one's secretary. So this is a really important one to me because by the time, I'll just give you a little more background on myself and how I arrived at creating this. By the time I was 26, I'd already worked for 4 different nonprofits. And I noticed that, a lot of them, I was there as an intern, and in internships, a lot of times you do get the clerical or administrative tasks that other people don't want to do, right? Things like taking meeting minutes. That was a big one I remember, or getting the donuts for the meeting, stuff like that. After I got out of that internship and into paid roles in volunteer management at other nonprofits, I noticed this trend that the volunteer coordinator or volunteer manager, whatever it was at a given org, was also getting relegated the duties of interns at other orgs. So taking the minutes, buying the donuts, all of those types of things that were really, I know people don't really use the word secretary nowadays, but really sort of the administrative assistant, those types of things that anyone else truly in the building could have done themselves, but there was an expectation that it fell on the volunteer manager. And I found that unacceptable. And it's a trend. It's been at more than one org. So that made me think, I think someone needs to do something. And turns out it's me. So another thing I'll mention is that not adopting other people's emergencies is a big one. So that can mean somebody asking you for something at the last minute, and you simply, instead of saying, let me call all the volunteers on my roster, you might say, I don't have someone available. You don't have to entertain it just because you were asked. So let's talk about, I want to talk about what makes us vulnerable in our profession to breaching our boundaries or allowing others to. Why is it something that is so endemic to this field and this role? Are we often at the bottom of the org chart at our organizations? Oh, Gerald says, yes, I'm a big fan of It's Your Emergency, Not Mine. And that is spot on. Thank you. I could get that on a t-shirt and just wear it to work every day. I'll be selling t-shirts after the show. Just kidding. Okay, maybe your supervisor doesn't understand your role or program. Maybe you report up to someone who's not within the volunteer management department. Maybe you're a department of one and your supervisor or director really is over a different department. Your coworkers who send you requests, maybe they don't understand your role or the role that volunteers fill within your program. Would you say we have a natural does our profession tend to attract to the hospitable type? Yes, we know that from the first poll. And do you often get unrealistic expectations from your coworkers? Of course. Especially those who think, and everyone I think has an analogy for this, who think that our volunteers grow on trees, you know, or who think volunteers are just waiting by the phone to be called, thinking, gosh, I wish the volunteer manager will call me. And my analogy is, you know, I just go out and water the volunteer tree and I pick them off the branches and come in with a great harvest of volunteers whenever they're needed. And I've heard some different ones. Oh, here we go. Brittany says all the darn time in caps. And I think there's like a clap between words. I can just tell. Shelly, I keep mine in my pocket and pull them out as needed. Of course, we shrink them down like little fairies, like Tinkerbell. Yep, right. Go to the freezer and thaw them out. You probably have to put them in the microwave to get them ready quick enough too. Oh goodness, how about this one? Are we ever perceived as volunteers ourselves? How do you know if you're perceived as a volunteer yourself? I mean internally in your org, not when you introduce yourself at events, pre-pandemic when there were events. I'm talking about if you can't get a volunteer to fill the request, is there ever an expectation that you're going to step in and fill it? That is a big time no. That's a no. There's a reason you get paid what you get paid and the volunteers get paid what they don't get paid. Okay. So why are professional boundaries important? And I hope that you agree with my presumption here that boundaries are important. There are professionals, we all know someone who doesn't have boundaries, either because they don't believe in them or they don't feel confident in enforcing them. So why are they important? This is my main thing here, why I'm here today under the advocacy topic and subheading. They further the credibility of our profession. When you are seen as the volunteer or the intern, how does that elevate our profession? Maggie, to prevent burnout. Yes, and I'll be talking about that. Thank you. So here it is. They protect our emotional and mental energy. If you're taking on more than you should be, what is it? The flame that burns brightest burns out the fastest. I don't know whose quote that is. I didn't make it up, but I think of it often. They prevent feelings of resentment. So that's right up there with that. If you're always getting handed things you shouldn't, instead of saying no, if you're just taking them without an argument or without a second thought, you might be building up a whole lot of resentment that's one day probably going to come out in a way that maybe it shouldn't. And you've probably seen someone do that in a job somewhere. They keep us from burning out. There it is. They help us focus on our mission. So we're talking about getting rid of the clutter that doesn't necessarily circle back to your mission. Maybe you get a request for something that there's already 5 other agencies in your geographic area offering, and you're just duplicating services. How does that really help your unique mission at your agency? These are all the examples I'm going to give throughout are real examples, and I'm sure you have many of your own. So let's, at this time, now that we're all on the same page about what professional boundaries are, why they're important, why we're vulnerable, can we launch our third poll, Gretchen, please? And thank you. So this question is, my professional boundaries are rock solid, a bit shaky, or you are admitting that you're a total pushover. Okay, so I'm going to watch those come in as I look at this comment from Emma. I talk about our mental bandwidth. Yes, just like the internet, we can only handle so much traffic. We can only handle so many projects, ideas, commitments before our bandwidth is tapped out. Not only that, not only is it a question of the quantity of our bandwidth, but also what we're using it on. You don't want to save a bunch of junk files on your computer and run out of, bandwidth. You want to save the files that matter that you're going to actually use later, right? So, all right, we've got results coming in. So a nice handful of you said your boundaries are rock solid. That's great. Most of you said a bit shaky, so I'm really glad you're here with me today. And a few of you said you're a total pushover, so I'm super glad you're here today. That's what we're going to be talking through, how to empower you to not feel like a total pushover. So thank you for your honesty, knowing that that was anonymous. So we're going to start by practicing. I think a lot of people, one thing I didn't put in the slide about what makes us vulnerable to breaching our own boundaries is I think a lot of us are conflict averse. We are helpers. We are here to help. That's why we're in mission-driven organizations. And the idea of saying no can feel like we're not helping, can feel like we're the bad guy. But really, when I talk about serving your mission, that no matter how your mission statement is worded, all of our missions boil down to the same thing, which is serving your clients first and foremost. So when you are saying no to someone and it's for your mission, you're on the same team, you're there for the same reasons to serve the same people in the best way you can within your role. So I want you to try to remember that saying no does not make you a bad guy. Saying no does not make you someone who is turning your back on your mission. It's what's enabling you to further it within the scope of your own role. So let's look at some how. We're practicing. So sometimes people will ask you to have a volunteer do things that are outside of what your volunteers do. That's not something they do. One that I get a lot in hospice is volunteers for personal care. So our volunteers are there for companionship in almost any way, shape, or form, but they don't provide hands-on care. So I had someone ask just yesterday, can we get 3 volunteers with strong backs to lift this patient from her wheelchair into the van? And we had to say that is not something our volunteers do. And it's something we train all our new hires on. We have, and this is something I recommend, though you can see it's not always effective. Whenever there's a new hire at your organization in any role, meet with them. Get with them for 30 minutes on Zoom to walk them through what your volunteers do, equally, if not more importantly, what they don't do, and how volunteers can help them in their department and role, but also, what not to ask for. That's not something we train our volunteers to do. So you might get a request for a volunteer to do something that requires special training, such as lifting and transferring a client. And that's not, if we don't offer the training, then we can't do it safely. This is when someone, I'm not talking about your direct supervisor, I'm talking about anyone else in the org who wants to hand you a project or a request. It's okay to say that's not something I can fit in my workload. That's okay to say. Or it's okay to say that's not something that's even in my role. So that's where this taking the minutes comes in. One thing that kept coming up at my org, I noticed when I started and when others in my role started, was that people from other departments would keep asking us to make flyers for their events. They could make their own like we do for our events, but B, we actually have a communications department. We're a big org and a guy who makes flyers for events. So, I would have to redirect people, oh, have you gotten in touch with so-and-so who makes the flyers? Things like that. I won't be reachable after work hours, but is there something we can plan ahead for next time? That's when you get those last minute requests. And sometimes, you can give a strong no for this time while still extending a yes for next time in the form of let's collaborate and plan ahead. Yeah, so Lisa asked, what if you have leaders that don't like when you do protect your boundaries? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but to that I will say, I would ask first, is that how they are with all employees at your organization? Or is it just those who work with volunteers? Okay, yes, all employees. So that's a bigger issue. Some organizations have a culture, a built-in culture where they're expected to be reachable after hours. They're expected to never say no, things like that. And that's not realistic. That's not work-life balance. And if it's not causing a big turnover problem in terms of employee retention, it's going to. So if it's truly something you can't sit down with the leadership in your org or your supervisor to sit down with them to work through, you may have to ask yourself if that organization deserves your time and talents, because not every organization does. You deserve to be in a role in an organization that respects and encourages, not even just like tolerates, but encourages work-life balance. And if you're not finding that at your org, please consider that you're not doomed to an entire future there. Thank you for asking that. Please do ask those hard questions. So going to the next part, you might be wondering at this point, isn't that kind of coming off like kind of rude? I don't want to seem like the stone cold stoic statue. I'm a warm person. I'm a friendly person. I don't want to change that perception. And that's fine. You can still assert your boundaries strongly and clearly, and you can sprinkle in some niceties. So you might say something like, that's a great suggestion. It's not something we can do right now, but thank you so much for your idea. It's, maybe something we can consider for a future assignment, or maybe it's a future direction the org can take. I can keep an eye out to hear from other staff if that's a need that keeps coming up. This is the one I was talking about, where if you're finding you've got what I call a repeat offender who keeps asking for things you can't give them, you might ask to sit down with them and say, hey, let's talk about the things I can give you through our volunteers, because you don't want them to think, oh, this is just the no lady or gentleman. Yeah, Brittany said, I do not think people see it as mean, but they think I'm not supportive. Sure. So that's kind of the same, the same sort of idea in the end of they're hearing it as you're not being helpful to me when I need help. So these are some of the things I think can really mitigate that perception. And then another one is, can we meet to plan for your volunteer needs next time? This is another one, that I was mentioning for those last minute requests. And sometimes people, have you noticed this phenomenon? You could get 10 requests and fill 9 of them, but someone's fixated on that one that you're saying no to and saying, how come you always say no? It's important to draw attention to those ones you have said yes to and that are successful. If you have a successful experience with a client because of a volunteer interaction, get some attention on that. You can send out an email. Maybe you can get it in a social media post if you have a release, a permission signed, things like that. Thanks, Liza. In my experience, she says, often people who don't respect my boundaries have not really thought about their own. Having an honest conversation about that can build a bridge. That's really interesting, isn't it? I do often find that too. People who have poor boundaries themselves, often, to them, that's their baseline. That's their benchmark on what normal boundaries are. And so they expect you to have the same terrible boundaries because they think that's reasonable. So having that conversation of, hey, these are what my boundaries are as an employee could be a good way to encourage them to reconsider their own. You might want to be careful about how directive you are with that. If they're not someone who reports to you, you don't want to step on their supervisor's toes. So I would say to encourage that conversation, but not necessarily just recognize your relationship to that person properly. So, all right, so I sprinkled some sugar on to the nose to make them sound like no, but what are some things you didn't hear me say? What's a certain word or phrase that I did not say in any of our practice examples or, oh, Paula nailed it. Sorry, I'm sorry, I apologize. Why? Why would I not say that? I know that in customer service 101, it's always apologize first, right? But why might you not? Because you were not sorry. I mean, A plus, ultimately that is the reason, yes, but why else? Not our fault, Paula, not our program's fault. That's it. That is the root of it. We apologize when? When is it appropriate to apologize? When we make a mistake, right? When we've done something wrong, when we've harmed someone. Have we done any of those things in these scenarios? No. If you do ever, of course, apologize, please do, but this is not that. Emma says we don't have to apologize for taking actions that keep us healthy. Say it again, sister. I mean, that is a good one for my self-care affirmations that are going to be at the end. Spoiler alert. Yes, so not only that, but taking actions that what? Protect and champion the mission of our organization through our volunteer program, through the scope of our role. We owe no one an apology. I love it. Heather says, instead of apologizing, I thank people for understanding. I love it, even if they are not understanding at all. That is a good one. I do like to end emails with that. I appreciate your understanding. I appreciate you taking the time to read this. Or maybe you're talking to them in person or over the phone or over Zoom. And you can also say things like, please let me know if you have any questions, in case they, they don't understand. All right, so this is a little trickier one. Next in our pop quizzy is, what didn't you hear me provide? This might be tricky. So in all of my responses, an excuse. Okay, what else might we call that? Alternatives. All right, you guys are nailing it. Yourself to labor in replacement of the volunteers. Oh my gosh, A plus times a million to this crowd. We got a good one going here. An alternative, Lisa, you got it. So an alternative. So a lot of us do this and are tempted to do this. If your role is to meet the mission of your organization through your volunteer program within the scope of your role. I know I've said that a few times. That's not a coincidence. So your role is not to see through to a resolution. So I'll give you a good example. In my organization, we have volunteers who are licensed cosmetologists. They provide in-home haircuts for our patients at no cost. They do it as, they're sort of semi-retired, but they keep up their licenses. So if I don't have one available, let's say both of my gals are in Florida all season, and yes, I'm recruiting for others in the background. All of that is true. But in a given moment for a given request for a certain patient, I don't have someone available. Is it my responsibility to call around and Google, are there visiting hairstylists that go to people's homes, and would any of them be willing to donate, or even for a small fee, and get that information passed along to the right people? No, my role is to meet that need through a volunteer when available, but if not available, it is not my responsibility to see the request through to completion if it's not going to be completed with one of my agency's volunteers. What's a danger? What's a risk if I do? If I see that through to completion and it's not one of my agency's volunteers, what if something goes wrong? I'm responsible for the consequences. What if someone complains? Well, now I'm resentful because I'm thinking that wasn't my job to begin with. I did you a favor. But really, did I bring it on myself because I even pursued it? Yes. So what if there is an alternative that is actually just really cut and dry? Gerald, you're spot on. It creates a future expectation. Yes, we're going to talk more about that. So what if there is a really quick alternative? Yes, by all means, please. Someone's asking you a bunch of questions about how to use their laptop and their work phone and the printer because they heard you're good with tech, but you have an IT person or department, yes, tell them, hey, have you contacted IT? Hey, please contact IT. Don't just withhold that to withhold that. But if it's something that requires you to do research and planning, then that's a different scenario. I hope the difference is clear. Let me know if not. So one more question in our pop quizzy, and someone sort of touched on it earlier. What else didn't you hear me provide? The really close response was an excuse, but I'm going to use a little bit of different language. So I will tell you, I'll give you this one as a freebie, an explanation. So if someone is asking, if someone's expecting you to be available on the weekend and you're letting them know you're not, you do not owe them, they are not entitled, I should say, to the knowledge of whether you've got your kid's soccer game or someone's funeral, or you're going to be taking an hour-long bubble bath and then binging on Netflix. It really doesn't matter because all they need to know is that you're not available. When your time is your time, if you offer an explanation, that implies that, well, your time is really their time, and you have a reason. You need to justify yourself in keeping it and taking it back. You do not need to justify yourself. Another one is, what if somebody wants your time at work? I'm not talking about a supervisor. I'm talking about someone else in your organization. You do not need to tell them, well, I've got this project and this deadline and this event. Don't spill your whole workload to them, because that opens the door for them to say, well, can't you move that around? Or what about this? Or don't you have time? How long does that really take? And you are not looking to invite them to organize your time management because you are a professional who does a great job of that as yourself. Faiza, this is so important. A coworker once gave the explanation that she had no childcare, and oh no, and another coworker offered to get her kid to babysit. Awkward. Yeah, you don't want people problem solving for you so that you can show up. Don't worry, I can free up your schedule. Yeah, as soon as you start giving an explanation, that's an invitation for that sort of stuff. Thank you for that super wonderful yet regrettable example. Amazing. Now, if it's your own supervisor who's giving you this assignment or request, then an explanation is absolutely, a whole conversation is needed where you need to talk to them about which is the highest of your competing priorities that they have given you. So that is a scenario when I would say this does not apply. To summarize what we've said so far, this is another thing. I did not make this up, but it really stuck with me, and I don't remember where I got it. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Metaphorically, obviously, but it's a spot-on metaphor, isn't it? We always hear the oxygen mask one, right? Put on yours before someone else's. But I like this one because it's not implying that we are responsible for putting someone else's on them. We're only responsible for ourselves. Paula, my intern Rose says that all the time. Go Rose, she's great. Thank you, Rose. Maybe Rose can tell me where it originated and I can credit the originator. So when we say no, we are removing unnecessary work from our plates. And when that happens, we suddenly find that we have time to focus on other things, whether it's our primary duties or our own special projects. What have you put on the back burner because you keep getting fires to put out for other people? Have you been neglecting something because of something else that maybe didn't deserve your attention in the first place? Or do you have a special initiative that you'd like to develop to grow your program that's been sitting on your back shelf for ages because of minutia and clutter from others? You deserve to pursue the programs that you are conceptualizing, as long as they're within your org's mission and the scope of your role. You have time to collaborate with other coworkers to identify meaningful and appropriate volunteer assignments. We talked about that. And suddenly you're only deploying volunteers to assignments that are meaningful and appropriate. You advocate for yourselves and your volunteers when you do this. So advocating is something that we do in every mission-driven organization for our clients. Why not for ourselves? We elevate our profession, and that is a huge, like Megan said in my intro, thing that I'm passionate about. And of course, we meet our mission. So what are the consequences of not saying no? And some of you already touched on a few. So this is one of them. You don't want to become the point person for a task that's not even yours to begin with. So, and I will also say you don't want to set up like a successor either. In that way, if you get promoted and someone comes into your role, or if you leave for an org that better deserves your time and talents. An example was we have an accreditation process where we have a surveyor come in every 4 years to reaccredit us and audit various things. It's common in healthcare. Those of you in healthcare know this. And basically, apparently my predecessor would be the person who would drive the accreditor around to shadow patient visits with staff. And I was approached to do this, and I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, that's not what I said, but I was appalled. This was like 7 years ago. I'm deeply offended still. So you don't want to become the point person for that kind of thing. And Brittany says, I struggle with this in particular because there are some markets that do recruit for roles that I don't recruit for. Yeah, so a national organization becomes a challenge. You got to be really crystal clear about what you do recruit for in all of your external marketing and internally to coworkers who are your ambassadors and other volunteers. Gerald, at one place, a new staff person started, well, the volunteer department at my other job, the volunteer does. Ha! Doesn't matter. You're not at your other job. That's great. I am going to cruise because I am realizing I'm short on time. So we talked about you're taking full responsibility for consequences if you see the thing through when you shouldn't, neglecting your actual duties within your role. This is a big one. You might be masking actual issues that need to come to light to be solved through proper channels. So if you're always the person taking the minutes, doing all the clerical, maybe helping everyone with their IT problems, could there be a need to hire for someone to do things like that? And the org will never know that because you keep doing them? All right. So opening the floodgates. So you can picture a dam bursting, all the water rushing through, and that wall breaks. Now picture trying to push that water back in. It's not happening, is it? It's not happening. So who's responsible for maintaining your boundaries? Tell me in the chat. I'm going to give you a quick visual cue. What's that? It's a mirror. It's an actual mirror. I have it. It's from Dollar Tree. You can get it too. You're responsible for maintaining your professional boundaries because you can't wait for permission from others. You can give yourselves permission. And if you're still not there yet, I give you permission. Then you can say, hey, some lady I've never met gave me permission, okay? That's fine. So we need to have some personal accountability in how we perpetuate our colleagues' behavior because we teach people how to treat us. People treat us the ways that we allow them to. You can say, I don't like it when people treat me this way, but when you let them, they don't know that. Always saying yes against your better judgment, giving wishy-washy answers to avoid conflict. Sound familiar? I used to do that. And then I would get responses, I might think I'm saying no to a potential volunteer, but then they come back with, when do I start? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, you didn't take the hint. No, I didn't spell it out clearly enough. How about this? Offering to help when no one else will every time. It's okay to sometimes, but don't be the only person every time. Of course, people are going to think, wow, she doesn't have much to do. Not clarifying expectations about who will be responsible for what. That's a good one that someone else mentioned earlier. So you don't want to be a Band-Aid for other departments' staffing needs or other needs that should come to light. You also don't want to step on other people's toes by saying yes to something when you know there's someone else who's actually responsible for that need. You certainly, by doing all of these things, we send the message that I've got lots of time. I'm just waiting to be delegated to. Is there anyone here who that actually describes? I don't see any hands going up, and it's not just because I can't see you. So if you've never set boundaries before, you're going to have conversations with people one-on-one. You can't kind of just do it all at once and expect people to uphold that, because that's new to them. Remember, you've taught them what's okay and what's not okay. So you need to reteach them. You may need to introduce your boundaries gradually. You may need to say, I know I've been able to help with this in the past, but that's not going to keep working for me. This is the last weekend I'll be reachable. Or you may need to say, I know I've been able to take the minutes at all the meetings in the past, but I'm only going to be able to maybe once a month. And this is where you're tempted to say, but maybe you could start a rotation with other staff. No, you just volunteered to start that rotation and take responsibility for it if you put the suggestion out there. Just leave it and walk away. I know I've been the go-to person for this before, but I'm no longer going to be available. So you're giving people fair warning, which you owe them if you've not done that before. So remember, do not apologize or justify your responses. Don't worry about being liked or hurting anyone's feelings. That's not what it's about. It's not your responsibility to come up with an alternative and see that alternative through. You are not a volunteer, and be persistent. Gretchen, do I have any more time?
You've got about 5 minutes.
Great. Okay, thanks. I'm going to talk real quickly about screening requests for volunteers. So the first thing you always want to ask, this is when someone is requesting a volunteer to help with at an event or with a client in any way, is it safe for a volunteer? Is it safe and reasonable? I have had requests for volunteers to visit patients who live at home, who smoke cigarettes with their oxygen on. I had to introduce change to the organization and say, this will no longer be a yes. That is an automatic disqualification. And what I am getting at is that you're introducing change. You're going to have to learn about change management, and I'm happy to talk more about that another time. There's also some really good resources from Toby Johnson and others. But you're going to have to basically get comfortable with other people's discomfort and your own discomfort and managing that. And that's okay. Discomfort is a bad rap. It's necessary for growth, right? Does it require extra training or certifications? Sometimes I got a request for, I want to hold a support group for people with Alzheimer's. Can volunteers come and watch the actual people with Alzheimer's while their caregivers are in the support group? I had to say, you're talking about an adult daycare and you have to be licensed and trained to run one of those. Sometimes you just have to educate people, sometimes over and over. What if they want to do a project, can volunteers help assemble these manuals? Well, sure. Did you print them already? Do you have a sample one? Can you meet with the volunteer to give them the materials and training? I have had people who assume I'm going to do all those things. So this is where you're setting that expectation of where your role ends and their role starts. I've sadly had some people go, oh, never mind. I'll do it myself. And that's a real shame to me. So if you can get a training going for all staff who would work with volunteers, that's even better. And then, is it compliant with labor laws? Real quick, you can't have two people doing the same job, one paid, one not paid. That is not okay with the Department of Labor. If you've got a nurse who is paid to care for clients and a nurse who is being a nurse who is not paid, not okay. Some of you might be going, oh my goodness, and have to relook at your programs. That's okay. Doesn't meet your agency's mission. Of course, that's always the last one. So lastly, I want to talk about screening volunteers. I just want to mention, I'm going to give you the down and dirty, which is that it's okay to turn people away. It's okay to dismiss volunteers. It's okay to say no to suggestions from current volunteers who you value deeply. And another one about the last thing is, sometimes when someone wants a request for something, they might say something like, can volunteers make this? Okay, sure. Are you getting the supplies? Are you paying for them? Let me know when the supplies are ready. Otherwise, they're assuming you're paying for it or the volunteer is paying out of pocket. Not okay. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead to my affirmations. These are what I want you to look in the mirror when you're getting ready for the day and say, I am the subject matter expert. I am a trusted gatekeeper. I am a leader. I'll tell you, you are a leader, even if your direct reports are all unpaid. Anyone can get someone to do something for money. Not anyone can get something to do something for no money, but you can. You are a leader. You are a special kind of leader. I am an advocate for my volunteers. I am a champion for my organization's mission. And these are some extra resources I have. So I apologize for blowing through the end real quickly, but I want to leave time for questions if there is any. So thank you guys for your participation and attention. And if there's anything else I can say to you to make you feel empowered, tell me what it is and I'll say it to you. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Megan or Gretchen.
All right. I'm gonna start sharing my screen now, if that's okay, Alana.
Yeah, I'm going to do a stop share.
All right. There we go. So do we have any more questions or comments? Let's see.
Thank you, everyone in the chat.
Thank yous. Yes, I agree with all of you, Alana. Thank you so much. That was so great. I needed to hear that myself. So
Good.
yeah, being new to the field, it's always good to hear that stuff. So thank you. And
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I think it's especially relevant to people finding their footing in the role, because especially if you don't have someone else in your organization to help you. You know, if you're that department of 1 or 0.5 because you're also in another role, sometimes you need that external support. So if you're not part of a local association that you could be, I definitely encourage it. They are support groups for us.
I completely agree with that. I know Alive has been a great resource and support for me, and this webinar also. I'm probably going to watch it again.
Good.
All right, so I don't see any more questions. Once again, lots of thank yous. So thank you again, that was great. So we will move on to, if I can get my slide to go, there we go, to a few announcements with Alive. So we have upcoming Academy webinars. Excuse me, there's a trash truck going by my house, so it's kind of loud. So June 4th, we will have Michelle Weisner, 9 years and counting, lessons learned from a virtual volunteer program. And this is an extra one, so make sure you register for that one on our website. June 23rd is going to be the volunteer value proposition, counting numbers and impact. And then August 25th is pause for change. So one more announcement, we always have volunteer positions available at Alive. So if you're interested in getting involved and making a difference, you can also go to our website to learn more information about that. So thank you all for joining today, and I hope you enjoyed this. We will have this available on our website under resources on the member side, so you can go on there and watch the recording and view the slides. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Megan and Gretchen.
Thank you, Alana
Thank you.
and Megan. Thanks for everybody, and apologies for the tech delay, but we will get that figured out.